right, hey Fosters. Kayla here. I've got Dr. Lisa with me, and we are here to do a couple of videos. One being our current adoption protocol for puppies, because there's been a few questions about that recently, and I wanted to touch base with you guys and have Dr. Lisa here so we were all on the same page. Dr. Lisa, I have had a few questions. One being, does my puppy need 2 vaccines for adoption, to be adopted?
So the answer is no, it doesn't need 2 vaccines to be adopted. We do want to have each puppy having 2 vaccines before they go to an adoption event, because that's something that's kind of under our umbrella of responsibility. Bringing these dogs into a place such as Angels where there are other dogs and they're not up to date on vaccines, we would be liable for anything that would be spread there. So we want to make sure that dogs going to events have 2 vaccines minimum, but to be adopted, there is no minimum. They're going to have 1 for sure, obviously, but they may get adopted before they get their second one. An example would be if they were born in rescue. We'll see them at their 6-week appointment. We'll do the first vaccine that day, and they may get in for their spay or neuter within 2 weeks and get adopted 3 days later, and that's perfectly fine. Their new adopter will have to follow up and get that booster done.
Sure, or sometimes we even welcome puppies that don't have any vaccine history, but they're definitely old enough to be fixed, so they would just have one.
Yep.
But no matter what, we want dogs to be just current on their vaccine schedule.
Yes.
So if it's been 3 weeks since their previous vaccine and they need boosters, we want to make sure to get that
And
done.
we should have, when you go home with your folder, you should have all the information in there about when they're due for their next vaccines. It's all in there. The very front page, or usually the only page you get, will have the dates that they were given and dates that they're due. And then you also should be getting reminders from our software program that so-and-so is due for something. Those reminders come out at 3 weeks. So we actually have a little bit of a leeway there with 3 to 4 weeks when we want to do that booster. So if you can't be here at that 3-week mark, that's okay, but we want to make sure that's the time we remind you so that you get in within that next week. And yes, we want to keep them up to date, but if they've gotten 1 booster and they don't need one for another 3 to 4 weeks, they are technically up to date.
Cool. So, and then the only other thing that we want to make sure is obviously that they're fixed. We'll cross that off of our list. And then preventatives, and make sure that those have been given and we have a next due date for those as well too, because we do want to adopt our puppies out current on those preventatives. One of the number 1 reasons I think is probably even just for treatment of intestinal parasites too, since that can be a thing with puppies.
Yeah, and for sure that use of that monthly Simparica Trio is part of our standard deworming protocol. So we do the 1 dose and then another dose of Pegranto, and then that second dose of Simparica Trio is kind of that 3rd dose of the full deworming protocol. So they want to make sure to get that 3rd dose, and it might be with you or it might be in their new home. So we do try and ask you when you bring them in for their spay and neuter if you need another dose of that, if they're going to be due for it, like that day or the day after. We might give you the next one, because we do recognize that some people aren't really getting into their vet for an exam and all that kind of stuff, but we can't dispense out months ahead of time. So we'll always ask you when you come in, are you up to date, do you need any more, but because we want to make sure that we do stay on top of that for sure.
And something else I just remembered, kind of just thinking about it too, is we want current health certificates too, if we haven't had one of those.
Yes.
So that would be a requirement too for adoption. But yeah, let us know if you guys have any questions, if we missed anything, or if anything that we mentioned didn't quite make sense. But we don't need multiple vaccines. Obviously, especially if you have a litter in your home, I would say too, as coordinator, maybe our meet and greets happen in less public spaces and more so in your home or your backyard. But we don't want to be bringing puppies that have only had 1 vaccine to things like pet stores for meet and greets. If they've only had 1. And that's something that I would recommend to adopters too, is if they're not completely current or don't have 2-3 boosters on hand, we want our adopters to even be aware of where they're taking their puppies, because a lot of their favorite things to do would be to take it to a pet store or take it to the park, or so limit exposure until those dogs have had vaccines. So,
and one more thing quick about the health certificate, just to kind of explain what that is. So it's required by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. It is not a health guarantee. It is not at all any kind of health guarantee. It is basically a legal document that gives us, Coco's Heart, the legal right to sell a dog. That's literally all that it is. So they'll come in, they'll get a certificate of health, basically saying that the veterinarian doing the exam does not believe this animal has any horrible contagious diseases that are going to be spread to the rest of the community. Doesn't mean they might not have a heart murmur or an ear infection or a bad knee. Doesn't mean that they're perfect or that there's any kind of health guarantee. It just means that they're legally safe to transport between state lines and to be sold from us to the public.
All right. Let us know if you guys have any questions, and thanks for watching.